Thank you guys for coming. Very big applause to Isaac in Switzerland, Isaac in Albania, and Isaac in Portugal joining this call. Let's give the stage to Anthony.
Okay, guys. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? All right, cool. So welcome to today's call. And majority of what we have today is kind of like a continuation of what we talked about before. From the last commission call and from the consultations we've been having, and from the conversations we've been having so far and the network calls, yeah. So let me just share my screen so we can start. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the first thing is, we're going to just talk a bit about, we have check-in. That's the first thing we have to do. I mean, Mina has already like caught up with a lot of us here, so that's going to be a lot easier moving forward now. Then afterwards, we talk about your entity reality, the recap of what we've been talking about so far, and then the pipeline issues we have and all that. Then we talk about the pipeline research that me and I are working on, and then finally we have a working time for what I have us to do right now. So it's basically the flow we're going to be having today. Okay, so let's move on. So I think me already did this. She already started recording this session. So let's not have issues with our recording sessions again. Now, I think again we've done this already. I like this. We are very, very often doing proactive, except for Randy's iPhone. Randy's iPhone is not an entity. Okay, cool. So I have some interesting checking questions for today. The first one is this, yeah? So what's the worst advice you've ever given somebody that they regretted? Let's start with Fabric. So
I
you
don't
gave somebody
know. I
you gave
really
somebody
need
an
to think
advice.
about it.
Yeah, think about it. You gave somebody an advice and then they regretted it. What's the worst you've done? Or maybe the one you think that somebody took when you gave them advice and they probably regretted it later on. So while Fabri is thinking, let's go to Randy.
Okay, so I hope you can hear me because I'm in the train. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so the worst advice that I've given, I would say when like you say to people, always think positively, be positive and think positively. But I would say you always cannot be that person, and if you try to be always positive, 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 it just make you so overwhelmed. So the better advice is that it's okay to not to be okay. But when I would say like when I ask people to always be positive and think positive this all the time, it just make them more overwhelmed if they have problems and they're just trying to put a fake smile and be positive. It just make them more overwhelmed and more stressed out. So that's why it's not it's not always you should be positive, but it should be like it's okay to not to be okay. That would be more like that it's not okay and it's okay to not to be okay. So yeah. And that happened. I did give that advice to be positive at the same time. Be positive all the time. And it just affected for one of my friends. So
I think I can relate to this. I mean, as MXP VPs, we are kind of like needed or supposed to always have this full level of motivation every time to just give to our members. I mean, it's always going to be obvious. Okay, you are going to be the one to motivate them, inspire them every single time, even when you do not have yourself. So I think it's kind of like a vocational hazard if you think about it in a way. they have to actually be the ones always motivating our guys, even when we do not need it, even when we do not even believe it's supposed to be. So I think I can relate to that. So thank you very much, Randy, for sharing. Mina, I think you're next. While Fabri is still thinking about his own.
I have this already. The worst advice would be I give my members the advice of participating to a lot of projects at the same time, because the ASEC values that I really love and I'm really into is enjoy participation. But I didn't know that some of them having the values that striving for excellence or something like that. So a lot of them joining so many projects, conference opportunities at the same times, and they end up fuck up in own scope because they're striving for excellence and they try to put like so many effort and stuff like that. So I think that would be something that others regretted. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think it's very obvious. Like for me, when I joined, it was initially my best value was enjoying participation. Because I like the fact that everybody was always dancing roll calls and everybody was always having fun. But eventually, when I started taking up more active roles, I think kind of switched to activating leadership, both in myself and then in my members as well. So I think the more time you spend in ISEC, the more your values, your favorite values about the organization changes and all. So it's fine. So Fabi, are you ready? Okay, so I think the worst advice I gave to somebody would be follow your passion. Um, I think the reason why I think is the worst advice is because your passion is basically what you make of it. You can actually have something that is not your passion become your passion. But if you are stuck on the idea that something you believe is your passion is what you should follow, you end up going the wrong route. So I think you can actually change anything to your passion. So I think possibly is the worst advice I've given somebody so far, in my opinion. Okay, so Fabri, now or never.
To be honest, there is nothing that came to my mind. I'm sorry.
So it is really, really interesting that Fabri hasn't given anybody bad advice. It means you are a very good VP. Good NCVP is very good. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing I have here. So the next one is a bit of a teaser for you. So which one of this is the odd one out? So Fabri, this should be something you should do. Which one do you think? So you choose first, and then Randy goes next. Afterwards, then Mint chooses her own choice. So which one do you think is the odd one out here?
Mm. Netherlands,
Okay. Any particular reason why?
because Norway, Sweden, and Finland are countries in the north of Europe, and Netherlands
Okay.
is in the
Okay.
west.
Randy, what about you?
Sorry?
No, I meant I heard you. Well, I was talking about Randy. What was Randy's choice?
I think Hungary.
Okay. So me, what about you? What did you choose? Oh, I can't ask you. You've already seen it. Okay. So Randy was right. It's Hungary. So the reason why Hungary is the odd one out is because it's not a founding member of ISEC. So the rest of the countries there are the founding members of ISEC in 1945. All of them, 7 of them are the 7 founding members. Okay, so I think that was really, really interesting. Randy, why did you guess Hungary?
I think it's also just because of the 7 countries I remember, but I wasn't sure, and then I just guess of Hungary, because I remember
Okay.
7 countries, but just not sure.
Now you are like an ideal Isaac if you remember that all the way up to now. Very interesting. Okay, last one. So what was one assumption that people have about MXP that you obviously cannot stand? Let's start with Fabric. I know what pisses me off when somebody talks about MXP. What pisses you off, or that you cannot stand, or I'll go first. So the one thing I think that people always say that I hate or cannot stand is that MXP is simple, or MXP is easy. It's just to talk to people. Hey, that's the word. MXP is just to talk to people. That's the one that I really cannot stand. It's not just about talking to people. It's way more than that. Okay, so Randy or Min? Oh, but Min is not in MXP. Min, what's your background? OGX?
I go around and I experience all, including TM. But
Wow.
at my time, it's still TM or PM, people management or talent management. It's not
So you
MXP.
can actually relate to this.
But
Okay, so what is
I
what,
also
what's
got my assumptions before I becoming members of like a person working in TM or PM.
okay?
My assumption is that we have a lot of power and impact on the entities. That's my assumptions. But when I actually really work on that, I will see like, yeah, we have the power over the people on having the power. I mean, we need to inspire, giving the impact, and then having guidance for the manager who lead others, but not directly touch to their members. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a very, very interesting assumption because I don't think I've ever actually assumed that there's power at MXP. Because I think the only thing I ever assumed was that we are supposed to be next in line after the MCP. But based on most compendiums, the next in line is actually finance and legal, obviously for legal reasons anyway. But I've always felt like since we work more with the LCPs and the MCPs in those cases, we should be next in line, I guess. But thank you for sharing. So, Randy or Fabri, who wants to go next?
I can.
Okay.
Well, that is that MXP is similar to talent management, people management, and also HR. That's I cannot I cannot stand it. That because it's not.
It is not at all. I think the only similarity I have there is the funnel. I think the MXP funnel is similar to the recruitment funnel outside in the real world because that's one thing I really, really enjoyed like that they did in regards to like the revamp of MXP. Okay, so Fabri, last chance.
Okay, so this is an assumption most on local level. There are many people who are convinced that to be a VP, MXP or TM, you need to be extrovert. And this is something very common,
Yeah.
and it's an assumption because I think the best TM that I met in my life are very introvert and analytics, and
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a very, very common misconception because I mean, who wants to talk to people when you're not an extrovert? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But example is me, for example. I'm literally an introvert. I think mine is just because my occupation requires me to talk to people. I'm bringing myself more out there and all. So I think that's a very, very interesting assumption people have as well, which is very, very wrong. Probably, which side do you err on the side of extrovert or introvert?
Mostly introvert.
I guess that. I could have guessed that. Okay, cool. So thank you guys for participating in that check-in. It was really interesting to see the assumptions that a lot of people have about TM and all the rest. Yeah. So the next thing now we're going to talk about is pipeline. Ideally, is just not pipeline in general. We all have an idea of what pipeline is. Yeah. So for the sake of ensuring that we are all both basically talking about Okay. So for the sake of the fact that we're both talking about the same thing, I would just say what I believe pipeline is. So a pipeline is just this people that are ready to take up roles that are available in an organization. It's more or less you actually ensuring that in the long term there's sustainability for your entity, your LC, for each roles you have. And I think that's where MXP plays a very, very key role in the fact that some of the standards that were set out in MXP actually tries to address this particular issue. And then some of them actually listed out in, like, for example, the MXP implementation global dashboard as well. Also tries to actually solve this issue by actually ensuring that, okay, yes, you've implemented MXP, but do you have a leadership pipeline documents, that leadership development pathway, for example, or a leadership pipeline that you, okay, say, this is what this person should ideally be doing in 6 months' time, in 1 year, for example, or is this person going to like potentially drop out of the organization? There are ways you can actually identify people who might leave the organization after a certain amount of time. So I think that's more like the aptitude test that people do sometimes. And I think system
Hi, babe. Mr. Justin, Anthony. Let me take a screenshot of him making a meme. Okay. Let me pause.
Okay. So I was talking about the talent pipeline issues we have in the entity. So I was basically saying that some entities will have like where MCPs are basically combining the role of being an MCP and being an MCP for MXP. One thing I know for sure is that you can actually have the role of MCP and do MXP well successfully, because sometimes you actually combine MXP and OD. MXP alone as a function is too broad and too large for one person for somebody to be doing it partially or halfway. So you need a full-time commitment to MXP. So now, the one thing I would like to know next is how exactly did you, for example, get into your MC in your own entity? So I would like to hear from Fabri and Randy, and I think me as well. I'll share. So how did you get to the MC in your entity? Which route did you take? Did you go from being a member straight to being on the an LCVP to LCP? How did you get there? What's the route you took?
I can share.
Okay.
My journey will be from LCVP of the commissions, then becoming EST for 2 batch, like 1 6 month for summer and then for winter. And then I go to another entities to become MC Director of Marketing for Malaysia. Then after that, come back to become MCVP OGV of Vietnam. So it's kind of complicated journey, but it has a lot of experience that's supporting me to become MCVP, OGV.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Okay, so Fabri, how did you get to the route and through to being MCVP right now, not even MCP elect, but how did you get to being on the MC? Did you go from traditional routes, the straight up from member to VP to LCP to EST? How did you or you jumped from EST and went straight to the MC? How did it work for you?
Yes, I was a member before, then LCVP. Then I was EST twice. I was consultant in Italy, and then I decided to apply for MC.
So you didn't do LCP?
No.
Okay. And do you feel like that impacted your experience by not having the LCP experience?
Yeah. Of course, it's also a position that I considered before,
Okay.
but I could not stay in the city of my home LC, so in that moment I said, okay, I will apply for MC because I could not apply for LCP. But I think, of course, being LCP before being MC is a plus, but it's not strictly necessary depending from positions and profiles.
I mean, it's one way to think about it. I actually agree with you partially. So let's hear from Randy. Hello, Randy on the train. Can you hear us? Okay.
Yes, I can hear,
Okay.
but
Right.
I'm not sure whether you can hear. That's why I put a text.
Yeah, I could hear you.
Oh, okay. So I don't know whether you saw my text, but yeah, I was IGB and then it was PM because in Sri Lanka we do that. Like we're in the front office and back office at the same time. So I was IGB and PM and then team leader in IGB and PM, manager in IGB and CVP and XP.
Yeah, I think she's breaking a bit. Okay. So the last thing I heard was manager for TM. Is that on the LC level or the MC level?
LC levels. And then I was LCVP TM.
Okay. Then you went
And
straight
then
to the MC.
LCVP TM. Yeah, LCVP TM to LCVP TM.
Okay. That's interesting.
Here.
I think the route is very interesting. Okay, let me share mine. So I was a member first, obviously. Then I became a VP for marketing. After that, I became an LCP in my home entity, ISEC in Nigeria. Then after, I think when I was LCP, I applied to be on EST for ISEC in Albania, and I was there for like I think for a year on the marketing team. Then after my LCP term, I applied again for Albania, and then this time around applied for the MXP team as icon manager. So I worked with the icon person for like 6 months. Then I think 3 months into my term as EST, I applied for the MC. So I think that's how I got to the MC. I think through the EST, because if I have to be honest, without the EST role on ISEC in Albania, I don't think I would have had enough entity context or ground reality to actually understand what the entity needed when I was applying. So it's really, really interesting to see that, for example, Randy, who went from Sri Lanka to Switzerland, I don't know how you did it with actually applying for the EST, but you're amazing because it takes a lot of research to actually apply from your home entity to another entity, actually get in. It takes a lot of work. So shout out to you, Randy, for that. Shout out to me as well for doing it. Okay. So that is that. So it's actually understandable now. So the common thing that I'm seeing as a trend is that you have people who go from being VPs straight to being on the MC. So another thing I've seen that most entities have done so far is that they actually make it a requirement that you have to have an LCVP experience. Take for example, when I was LCP, one of that was my home entity as in Nigeria. One of our LCPs did not have VP experience. So when he became LCP, he actually ran his LC into the ground. So his LC went from being a probationary member to being disbanded. And some people actually like attribute that particular lack of operational knowledge to the fact that he was not a VP before. So to a certain extent, I kind of agree because there's only so much opportunities to give to somebody. So, okay, let's give them a benefit of the doubt. He has never done it before. Okay, let's just see if he will do it very well. It doesn't really work that well for higher roles, for example, like LCPs and MC. So it brings the question into play that saying with that. So it brings the question into play that how exactly is it beneficial to actually have somebody who doesn't have that LCPP experience going on to being an MC, if they will actually do well. There are edge cases, obviously, that, okay, this person did not do LCPP, but he went on to becoming a great member of the MC. But more or less, they actually do not perform well. That's the assumption that a lot of entities are going with. I mean, from what I've spoken to a lot of people about now. So the next thing now we actually have to talk about is that there are different ways that people actually relate to what they actually want to apply for, what they want to do in their entities. Now, if you see somebody now, say they don't know what they want to do after the LCPP term, they say, okay, yes, I actually had like a very good team member experience. I had a good team leader who actually showed me the ropes. I was really, really committed to the journey. I knew what I was doing, and I knew that I really, really enjoyed my exec experience with this particular team leader. Now, for them, it's very obvious to say that, okay, yes, I want to go on to become something else. Some people came into ISEC with a very like strategic and calculative ambition. Okay, at this particular point in time, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and at this particular point in time, I'm going to be out of ISEC in this particular position, and I'll be having this position by this particular point in time. For these people, they are like a dream come true for those of us in MXP as MCPPs, because you don't need to actually like help them a lot with positioning. Randy, did you want to say something? Okay, I'm assuming no. So for this kind of people now, it's very easy for us to actually just guide them through, because they know what they want when they join the organization. It's clear cut and, okay, yes, by this particular point in time, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do that. Now, for the other set of people, it's not so easy, because I mean, you need to actually direct them, motivate them, tell them, okay, yes, what have you done so far? Where do you ideally see yourself in the next few years? Where do you see yourself in the next few months? Then you now move forward to planning their future for them. And I think this is where a personal development plan comes into play. Okay, you know what you're doing each month. Okay, let's say you're having personal development plans with them, planning together with them, and then you're having one-to-one spaces with them every month, seeing how they're progressing over time. Let's say in March, this person said they want to do this. In April, they still want to do the same thing. You're seeing a level of consistency in what they want for their future. It's That's the other spectrum of people we actually have a lot of in ISEC. You have people who you need to actually direct in a way, motivate them, coerce them in a way as well, to actually say, okay, this is what you should maybe try try this out and see if it works for you. Other people, like I said, the first category of people, you don't need to do that for them. They already know what they want. You just need to enable them to get what they want at some point in time. Now let's talk about some things you actually need to take note of when you are doing your planning, or trying to think about your talent planning in your entities, for example. So the very first thing you need to take note of is that you need to actually be available to do the planning. It's it's not really ideal for you to actually start doing talent planning when you know that your availability is not going to work. So take, for example, you want to actually check, or we want to find out what exactly are the gaps in your entities, what is the specific needs of each of these roles you're trying to fill up. So if you're not available to actually have these conversations with key strategic stakeholders in your entity, it becomes an issue for you. Another thing you need to actually do is that you need to be transparent. So transparency in the sense that, okay, I identify that I need to fill these positions. And if these positions are not filled, there's going to be a problem. So you need to be transparent enough with yourself to know that, okay, yes, this is what I need. And then you need to communicate the same thing to your, I think, to your direct reports is what I would say. So let's say people that you need to actually be accountable to, like your MCPs, your commission members, for example, if is the kind of relationship you have with them. Excuse me, please. Okay, so that was saying you need to be transparent to these guys. You need to actually ensure that you tell them that, okay, this is what is happening in the entity. This is what we feel like we need to actually fill up. So if you are having an LC, for example, that's having a gap of finance talents, because I think this is a very common issue amongst LCs. There's really no talent for finance, and I think it comes from the fact that the role is a bit more specialized than most. So there's like a huge gap in number of people that actually want to apply for finance. It's more or less, you see people that actually have just interests, that actually want to actually go further with finance, that actually apply for that. And if you check globally, it's kind of like you're rotating the talents amongst entities. You see somebody being an MC manager for one entity in finance, they go on to become MC manager, MCVPs in another entity. Then maybe in 2 years' time, they go for another entity as well. So it's kind of like going round and round. It's like a trend you notice if you actually think about it for finance roles. So another thing you need to also do is your research. So when you're considering doing your talent planning, obviously this is a no-brainer. You need to do research. This is why we here now, me and Min, I keep saying me and Min. Min and I are going to consider doing that and showing how we're going to do that research. So that's one thing you should take note of as well. Now, the next thing is you need to be patient. It's talent planning is not really easy to do. Having to have like a coordinated plan for your talent pipeline, it takes a bit of time. And it takes a bit of foresight and long-term planning to actually get from where you are to where you need to be. So I think that's one thing that actually comes into play where you're connecting the dots for where you have gaps to the gaps you need to fill. So this is where you think about your real HRO now and your ideal HRO. So you're talking about being patient enough to say that, okay, I'm not where I want to be, but I can actually get there eventually. So the next one is you need to actually be honest with yourself, like I said before. It's not really going to be ideal for you if you have these issues with yourself, with your entities, and you don't know, and you're not telling yourself the truth, or you're actually hiding it, because it becomes more glaring over time when you actually have to relate that to your MCP, because your MCP is not the final responsible. He's not the expert in MXP membership experience as a whole. It is you. So you need to actually be honest with yourself. When it's not working, it's not working. And then do not be too rigid in your strategies, as the case may be, to actually pivot. You need to understand when it is working and when it's not working. So if it's not working, you pivot immediately. Now, for the next part of this session, this is where we'll talk about how we plan to solve this in the entity. So do we just keep offering you consultancies? Okay, this is what you're having issues with. This is how we feel you should solve this. This is what you can actually try. Or do we actually go about a different approach? So this is one of the reasons why we are here today, to figure this out and see if we're actually moving in the right direction, as the case may be. Now, the next thing I would like to know is this. So what is the reality of the talent pipeline in your entities? So being that I'm also an MCBP, MXP in my entity, I think I can actually contribute to this conversation as well. So let's start with Fabri. Let's leave the girl on the train, to being on the train for now. So Fabri, what is the reality of talent pipeline in your entities? Do all the roles you have currently the roles you currently need to fill, are they having like potential people that are going to apply for it, 2 or 3 at the very least, or do you have like a gap in the number of people that are going to apply for the open roles, as the case may be? What's the reality in your entity?
So, in the past year, we had huge struggles in terms of pipeline, especially for EB and TLB. Just one data, we had 0.47 applicant per position for TLB. So it means that right now 53% of our TLB is recruited. So people who just joined ISAC and was elected TLB. But in our monthly survey, we track every month the intention to apply for higher roles. And in these 2 first months of the LC term, I see that most of the people have the intention to apply and continue in the organization. So it's about 60-65% of the entity. So what I'm trying to do is to capitalize this data and put the focus of my network, but also of the LCPs, on keeping these people interested in applying for higher roles. creating nurturing plans, etc. So this is the current context.
Okay, so it seems like if you are 65% for membership that are actually applying to that are planning to apply for higher roles, it seems you're not having so much of an issue with your talent pipeline, yes?
Sorry?
I say if you're having like 65% of people wanting to apply for higher roles, is it correlating, like that's the data from your monthly survey, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So is
Yes.
it correlating with the people who actually apply for open positions in the entity?
No, because most of our entity are people who just joined ISEC. So most of our plenary are really unexperienced. But it's
Okay.
positive that they are manifesting the intention to stay longer in the organization and to apply for higher roles.
Okay. So that means there's something there's a gap somewhere between their intention to actually apply based on the survey data you're getting from your survey and then what they're actually doing themselves when it comes to having OC applications, for example, or LCEB application or MC application, and that opens up and they do not apply. So that might be a potential gap in your data, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it is. But for example, in the past semester, even the intention was low. And
Okay.
then also the reality was a reality of few people applying. So I think that there is a gap, but the prediction that we can take from the monthly survey is also reliable in some way. It gives us a good picture of the real intention of people.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's really, really important to understand because for me, it's one thing I've actually come across when it comes to like monthly surveys. People feel something they think that you want to see or what they believe that you want to hear rather than the actual truth. So we always try and reiterate the fact that you should tell your truth in your surveys to not actually like give us data that you think we want to see. So thank you very much, Fabric, for sharing. Randy, can you talk?
Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear.
You could just let me know if you find just. And so yes, in Switzerland, its current pipeline is a huge issue. And I also told you discussed with you, it's a huge issue that we are facing. Only 2 LCs out of 7 had a proper LCVP elections. For others, we had to struggle a lot. First to find an LCP, then to find LCVP. So for EST positions, we never get applications from internal. The last semester, and also for team leader positions. So like last semester, it was huge issue in terms of current pipeline. And during the conferences, during the commission spaces, and also in the recruitment. And my, as MCBT team, my strategies, everything was mostly based on talent pipelines. So it's like even the conference, one of our key objectives always has been the pipeline where we boost them, make them interested on the position, doing that. Especially for me, one of my key strategies is that in Switzerland, there is a team leader. And that has been a huge issue that LCVP role has so much work to do. And people don't want to get that job role just because of the workload. And at the same time, there's no like a middle layer.
Okay.
So that's why this time it was my whole idea of the top.
Um, Breaking a bit. Andy, we cannot hear you anymore.
Do the layer in Switzerland. That is
Okay, I think your network is your internet is beginning to act up, Randy. So I think the things I've heard so far is as regards the fact that the VP position is kind of like unattractive in a way. People feel like there's a lot of work in the VP position. So this is kind of like similar to a situation that people feel like
Challenges that I
MC has a lot
focus
of work.
on leadership pipeline. Uh,
Candy, you're still talking. I don't think that was even possible because you're on mute and I was still hearing your voice.
in Switzerland, but overall, pipeline is a huge issue. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Can anybody hear me? Okay, because I was still hearing Randy in my headset. Okay, so thank you for sharing, Randy. So for me, the reality of direct pipeline in my entity is kind of similar to Randy's own, but the difference is that we have like a revolving door in our membership. What that means is that we have people joining the organization very quickly and then leaving very quickly as well. So it's something to do with, I think I talked to my LCP in the entity about that. She was the former LCVP MXP. So I talked to her about actually finding a solution to ensuring that the profile we're actually recruiting is the profile we need for. So I think what they were doing before was basically recruiting any person that shows interest into the organization, which sometimes involves people who were in their final year in the university, and that kind of like really impacted their longevity in the organization. So if you're recruiting people who are in their final year in the university, there's a high likelihood that in 6 months' time or in 1 year time, they are leaving the organization because their priority will change. So it's either they actually apply for the MC, which is very unlikely because if you don't, you cannot generate the amount of knowledge needed to actually all the knowledge you need in ISEC to apply for MC in 1 year. Obviously, there are edge cases where people actually apply for MC with actually having more up to 1 year experience. But that's the reality for my entity. We have a membership issue, and which correlates to having like a very, very poor leadership pipeline in terms of members not actually having a lot of people to do. As for example, we're supposed to wrap up transition and selection for my entity in January, but up to like last month, we are still doing selection for LCEB because there were not a lot of people and the right candidates to fill up those positions. So I think I can relate a lot to this talent pipeline issue. It's something I'm actually actively trying to solve in my entity as well through utilizing A/B testing, trying something. If it doesn't work, trying another thing as well. So I think it's something we all can relate to as MCVPs right now. Okay, so the question I have, if I ask it again, how do we solve this? So me and I have decided to come up with a strategy we think might actually work, and that's actually conducting pipeline research. So if you were in the last call, there was a document that being shared, the pipeline research document she did for the AP region. So we are going to perform a similar research for Europe right now. So I think in this case, I would ask Min to come on board. Min, are you here? Min.
I am here. Just come back.
Okay, so I was talking about the pipeline research that we are planning to conduct in the Europe region. So can you like take it up from here?
Yeah. So guys, I'm very happy because Fabri and also Randy was the one who joined the commission call last month. So you're gonna see the entire report already, right? And I remember some of you guys asked if we want to implement that one, the same thing for Europe. Is that from Fabri? You asked that, right? I'm not sure. I'm not remember who asked, but I remember someone asked.
Yeah, somebody did.
Yeah, great. So that is why, after discussion with Anthony and regional office team, we decided to do it. Yeah, to see some insight. And it's clear for Anthony as well to to support you guys in terms of pipeline, because that's also a very hot issue for the regions, and it's also clear for him as a RCT, because as you see, the engagement of MCV, TM, and MXP is not that good, like only 2 of you joining the commission call. So it's the same thing happen when Anthony providing the support and the consultancy for others MCVP as well. It's very low in terms of engagement and booking the slot for acting support. I think because also MCVP is very busy and also not getting used to the support from the regional office from last term. Cool. So I will present the reports and tell you what to do. Okay, cool. So basically, I will have a working tool, the same thing. That this is something that I did for AP, but me and Anthony will collaborate and do something similar for Europe, and we will change all of this entity into Europe. And actually, we will set the goals for each entities based on the situation of pipeline and also the people. Then we try to push for the responses. For example, as you can see, like some of the entities, we just put 5555, but some of the entities, they have like a lot of engagement. For example, South Korea or Japan, or India, they have a lot of people writing and filling the surveys. So we will put the goal for you guys as well. For example, from Portugal, we'll have 5 responses or 3 responses or 10 responses. This will be based on you guys, and also Switzerland as well. Then after that, we will have a survey. So for example, if you check this, if you see this survey, go to this one. What happened?
I think you're still on the Google Sheet screen.
Yeah. It's here. It's the log guys. Just be patient. 'Waiting for.
The network is acting up again.
Huh? What do you say?
Stop sharing though.
Yeah, because it's nothing.
Should I share my screen instead?
%60% loaded. Come on. Yeah. I'm tired. I send the link to you guys. Can access this, right? So basically, I would just explain. You don't need to watch the screen. Oh, it's here. You see, this is the power. You just like don't need to, then it's appear. Okay. So basically, in here we will have some positions like LCP, LCVP, MCVP, MCVP current, like your MCVP of 22, 23. Then you just need to forward to your MCVP in your MC team. And then you explain to them the purpose, and also you tell them, maybe you can have a working space in the MC check-in or MC meetings, and then everyone complete the survey. Yeah. And we will launch this survey maximum like 1 month or 20 days only. And after that, we will see the entire data. And after that, we will have the report for Europe. Like last time you see I presented. Yeah. And at the same time, we will have the MCP input, which means I will work with my regional office team that work directly with the MC, your MCP current right now, and they will give the input in terms of how they think about their pipeline in the entities. Yeah, like this. For example, we will ask like state a culture in the entities that support the pipeline, a culture that does not support the pipeline. From 1 to 10, how much do you think entities culture can affect people motivations? Like the MCP will give the input by talking, by verbal. And this is quantitative research, qualitative research. Yeah, because we ask directly from the MCP perspective. And something we need to work on is the quantitative research, like the number of responses. Then after that, we will have a report, and we will present this report to the people who join RPM, which means the MCP elect. We'll have like working space between among MCP elects, and then we will discuss about, based on the insight, what should be the way forward. For example, if the data show that the culture that not supporting pipeline in Portugal is not sharing so much about learnings or very busy MC or something like that, we will have an action step, like next step for your term, about changing the culture or how to drive the culture like that. So you guys clear with this? If it's clear, can give me a wave or say clear. And if not, you can ask the questions.
It's clear for me.
Yay. Thank you. About ready?
Maybe on the train.
It sounds like a Instagram account name, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's clear.
Yep.
Cool, amazing. So your CTA is just spreading this survey, motivating your members to fill the survey, your MC team as well, and explaining it to your commissions, like LCVBTM. And if you want, you can do the same thing for local to research about pipeline in the entities. Yay. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Min. I hope that was really insightful for you and Kieran is gone. Okay, and that's you, Fabri. So the last piece we had today was the working time. So we just needed to just talk about some of the questions to ask when you're actually thinking about conducting your own talent pipeline research for your own entity first off. So these are the questions where we could have talked about if we had a lot more people on the call. So the very first one is, what are the must-have skills for the role you need to fill? And given the fact that I'm basically combining my experience in human resources in the outside of ISEC here, as well as in ISEC as MXP. So the first thing we need to find out is what are the must-have skills you need to have for the role you're trying to fill up. For every single role you're trying to fill, you have like a talent pool of people that you need to actually have specific talent and pipeline you're looking for. So if, for example, we are using an ATS, and I believe we are using ATS in ISEC, though it's a bit sketchy right now, the one they are integrating into XPA. So if they have like keywords research, you can actually filter profiles based on those keywords. So that's kind of like similar to what this first question is trying to solve. So what are the must-have skills that this person must have for this role? When you've identified that, then you can now work up with a plan to say, okay, we can create an education cycle to actually upskill this person to meet up that particular skill set, for example. Now, the next thing is that you talk about the top 3 contributions that this person will have for this new role. Then you also need to talk about how they're actually going to contribute to like this new role in the next first 90 to 120 days. So what this means is that in the first 3 months of the person's role in the organization, or the first quarter of their term in that new role, what are the things that you expect this person to actually contribute to that role? So these are things you actually need to identify for every role that is open in ISEC you have in your entity. Another thing is that you find out what is the downside to not filling this role. Obviously, the downside, number one, is that you have like a talent gap. You have like a huge gap in terms of like leadership in your entity, because if there's no VP, for example, in your commission, that means every team member in that commission is going to suffer from not having a clear-cut vision, direction to lead them in that entity for that whole 6 months or 1 year, as the case may be. Another thing is that you need to find out what this role is going to have in terms of symbiotic relationship with the bottom line of the organization and the business goal of the organization. So you want to ensure that, okay, yes, if we do not have an MCVP, MXP, how does this affect ISEC in Portugal, for example? How does this affect ISEC in Albania? So that's one thing you need to identify. Then you now rate it on a scale of preference in terms of like, how important is this role? So that's where you now know, okay, these are the role that needs to be filled first before any other one. So this way is easier for you to actually understand how to plan your your talent pipeline moving forward. So these are the questions I would have liked to ask people, share with you guys, if they were on the call, more VPs on the call, so that you can actually enter breakout spaces and then you discuss about this. But in the absence of Brandy on the train and just me right now and you, Fabri, I think we can actually just basically share what we think is the right thing to do for these questions we share to ourselves. So let's talk about the first one, or let's just talk about, let's see, the second question, which is the top 3 contributions for each role. Let's use MXP now. So if, for example, you have an LCVP MXP in your entity, what are the top 3 things you expect the person to do in the first 3 months of their term, or the first quarter? So for me, I would say the first thing I expect a VP to have or to do is, first of all, to identify that structure. So you first of all need to create a job structure for your team. That's team structure. I expect the VP to have that done. Secondly, I expect the VP to have like routine set out. So you have a routine set up for your first 3 months. How often do you want to really get this done? And the routine, you'll not do it by yourself. You set up the routine alongside your team. So if you actually have to set up like weekly or bi-weekly meetings, you set it up with your team as well. I think the last thing I also expect the VP to have is that I expect the person to set up like a personal development plan for their members for the first 3 months. So, okay, you say this is what you're going to be developing, or how you want to plan to develop, explain the PDP, whatever PDP template your entity is using to them. I think top 3 things I would expect an LCVP MXP to do in the first 3 months of their term. What about you, Fabric? You can use any role. It doesn't have to be LCVP MXP.
So how was the question exactly?
Okay, let me share this question again. So top 3 contributions for the first new role. So the first 93 and 120 days. So the question is just, what do you expect this new person to do when they get into the role for the first 90 and 120 days? Top contributions, top 3 contributions. So let's say you elect a new LCP, and then you ask the LCP now, what are the top 3 things you want to do for the first 3 months of your term? That's kind of like the question. You understand? Yeah.
In the first 3 months, I think it's important to have a good team building with the EB.
Which role is it?
Sorry?
I mean, for which role are you like giving top priorities now? Which particular position?
Okay, now you mentioned LCP,
Okay,
but I
yes.
didn't understand
Okay.
because here it said new role, so I didn't understand fully the question.
Okay, so I just gave a reference to like LCP as an example of the new role, for example. Since you're using LCP, go ahead. LCP is the position you're referencing now, so let's go ahead with that.
Okay, for LCP, for example, in the first 3 months, it's important to have a good building with the EB and starting the semester having a strong plan with the milestones and the actions to achieve every month in order to achieve the numerical goals. I think it's important to establish a good routine and cadence of accountability with the EB, but also a good routine in the LC, because of course an LCP is responsible not only to lead the EB, but the LC as a whole. And yeah, after these basics are in place, it's important to keep the engagement of the people and motivate them to perform and achieve their goals and track the plan achievement and execution of the milestones planned in the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Welcome back, Randy. So we were just basically answering some of the questions that we're supposed to have for the working time. So the question we are answering is, what are the top 3 contributions this new role will make to ASEC within the first 90 to 120 days? So what it means is that if, for example, you have, Fabri was answering the question of what the top 3 contributions of an LCP would be in the first 90 days of becoming an LCP. That's the first quarter. So that was that, and I spoke about the role of LCVP, MXP. So would you like to share? Is your network good enough for you to share any top 3 contributions for any role you think that might, any role that somebody might prioritize for the first 90 days of any role you have in mind? Can be LCVP, team leader, EST.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, can you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so apart from CP, okay, what are the two contributions? It could be any role, right?
Yes,
That
any
I
role.
can choose. Okay. I would say, according to the experience that I had with MCVP, can I go with that?
Yes, sure, you can go with that.
First is, it's really important to understand the context and like I'm not sure what contributions that you were like actually talking about, but
Like what you feel like is the important thing you need to do for the first 90 days, top contributions to the role.
okay. First, then in that role, first you have to do what I feel is the first thing that you have to do is properly understand the environment, the context, and the people that you're working with. That is really important for you to get into the track, because first thing is that you need to get into that track and you need to get into that role. But before you getting into that role, you first need to understand the context and what kind of role that you are getting, like you need to learn the surrounding. That's how, like, for me, that's how it was important to come to Switzerland, like from Sri Lanka to straight away to NCVP role in Switzerland. I had to do a lot of research on the context and the people. Then I would say the other thing is that thoroughly understand your job description and what kind of things that you actually can delegate. Like the differentiation of your responsibility and also delegating stuff and your accountability, like understanding the context of that. Like I feel like that's something that is important. Well, for now only those two are coming to my mind for three contributions. And
Okay.
I guess yeah, anyway, then we are anyway doing planning with the stuff on the research and the data, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That was really insightful as well. So I would say thank you all for sharing. This space was really interesting. And like Min said, we are going to be reaching out to you within a month concerning how to move forward with the pipeline research project. And so I think at this point, I might will hand the sheets or the session over to me to take a photo. So we need to take a photo. Yeah. So Min, can you take a photo?
Can you stop sharing and you send the link here in this so that Randy and Fabri can give the input?
Okay. The
Right.
link to the feedback.
Randy, you can open the camera. Show up your train. Amazing. 3, 3, 2, 1. I should make it again. 3, 2. Great. Thank you guys for joining. And remember to fill the feedback before you out.